Hereford is an old town, ancient some might say. Its stones have seen centuries pass like fleeting seasons. The River Wye curls around it, a silent dark serpent. Cathedrals rise, their spires piercing the often grey sky. But not all of Hereford's history is written in prayer books or carved into saintly effigies. Some of it festers. It festers in the damp cellars and forgotten alleyways. It festers in the heart of a building that squats malevolently on a quiet street, a place locals speak of in hushed, nervous tones. They call it the Lazarus Tomb Hotel, a name that promises resurrection but delivers only damnation. It's a place where the past isn't dead, it isn't even past. The hotel doesn't look like a tomb from the outside, not at first glance. It's a handsome, if slightly grim, Victorian structure. Red brick, darkened by a century of English rain and soot. Its windows are like vacant eyes, staring out at the modern world with an ancient indifference. But stand before it long enough, especially as dusk bleeds across the sky, and you feel it. A coldness that has nothing to do with the weather. A sense of being watched by something unseen, something that has been waiting for a very long time. The feeling crawls up your spine like a spider. The Lazarus Tomb Hotel has a story, a dark and twisted one, and it is eager to tell it to anyone brave or foolish enough to check in for the night. People say the building is wrong. Fundamentally, architecturally wrong. The angles are just a little too sharp, the corridors a fraction too long. Doors seem to appear where none existed moments before. Guests report feeling dizzy, disoriented, as if the very geometry of the place is shifting around them. It's a subtle, creeping madness that seeps into your thoughts. The air inside is thick, heavy with the scent of dust, decay and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet like old blood. This is not a place of rest. It is a place of perpetual waking nightmare, a labyrinth built not of brick and mortar, but of fear itself. It holds a darkness that has a name. That name is Mortimer Slade. The hotel is his creation, his monument, his prison. It was built with his money, stained with his sins. He is the ghost in the machine, the architect of its misery. Though he died a lifetime ago, his presence clings to the hotel like mold to a damp wall. He's in the creak of the floorboards, the flicker of the lights, the sudden, inexplicable chill that raises goosebumps on your arms in a heated room. To understand the haunting of the Lazarus Tomb Hotel, you must first understand the man who seeded its foundations with pure, undiluted evil. He built a hotel, but he created a tomb, and he never, ever left. The Lazarus Tomb Hotel was not always known by such a grim moniker. When its doors first opened in the late 1880s, it was called the Hereford Grand. It was meant to be a symbol of Victorian prosperity and progress, a beacon of luxury for the wealthy traveller and the discerning local. The finest carpets were laid, the most ornate chandeliers hung from the ceilings, crystal glasses chimed in the dining room, and a grand piano played softly in the lobby. It was a facade, of course, a beautiful, meticulously crafted lie, because beneath the polished wood and gilded plaster, the hotel's foundations were rotten from the very beginning. They were built on a bedrock of secrets and suffering. The land itself was tainted. Before Mortimer Slade bought the plot, it had been the site of a debtor's prison, a place of unimaginable misery. Men, women and even children had withered away within its walls, forgotten by the world. Their despair had soaked into the very soil. Local folklore claimed the ground was cursed, a place where nothing good could ever flourish. Slade, a man who scoffed at such superstitions, saw only a bargain. He had the old prison torn down, its grim stones pulverized into dust. But you cannot erase misery so easily. You can only build on top of it, and the new structure inherited the sorrow of the old. Slade oversaw every detail of the construction with a feverish intensity. He was no mere investor, he was the master puppeteer. He demanded strange, nonsensical additions to the blueprints, a series of narrow, windowless rooms in the sub-basement not connected to any main corridor, a labyrinthine network of service tunnels that seemed to lead nowhere, a peculiar sealed-off suite on the top floor with a reinforced door and no key. The builders grumbled. They whispered that Slade was mad, that the hotel was a folly, Accidents plagued the project. Scaffolding collapsed, tools vanished. A young worker fell to his death from the roof, his screams swallowed by the Hereford morning. When the Hereford Grand finally opened, it was a masterpiece of deception. To the public, it was elegance personified, but to those who worked within its walls, it was a place of unease. Maids spoke of cold spots that moved from room to room. Kitchen staff heard disembodied voices echoing from the empty larder late at night. The grand piano in the lobby would sometimes play a single discordant note on its own, a sound that cut through the silence like a shard of glass. The hotel had a life of its own, a secret heartbeat that pulsed with the inherited pain of the prison and the fresh malevolence of its new master. The fear had been plastered over, but it was already beginning to crack through. Who was Mortimer Slade? To the public, he was a gentleman of means, a recluse perhaps, but a respected one. He had made his fortune in shipping and industry, a man with a Midas touch. He dressed impeccably in dark, tailored suits. His face was a pale, unreadable mask, dominated by cold, calculating eyes that seemed to look right through you. He rarely smiled, and when he did, it never reached those eyes. It was a predator's smile, thin and sharp. He moved through Hereford like a phantom, a man of immense wealth and influence, yet utterly detached from the community he lived in. He was a shadow in a well-cut coat, a whisper of power. The truth was far darker. Slade was not just a businessman, he was a monster. His fortune was built on exploitation, blackmail and violence. He was a loan shark of the most vicious kind, preying on the desperate and the destitute. He would ruin families with a stroke of his pen, then buy their assets for a pittance. Those who crossed him or failed to pay their debts simply disappeared. There were no witnesses, no bodies, no proof, just a sudden, chilling absence. Rumours swirled around him like mist off the Wye. Tales of men taken to his secluded country estate and never seen again. Whispers of a darkness that went far beyond mere criminality. His cruelty was legendary, though never spoken of above a whisper. He was said to derive a twisted pleasure from the suffering of others. He collected not art or antiques, but secrets. He knew the hidden shames of Hereford's most prominent citizens, and he used that knowledge as a weapon, twisting lives into knots of fear and compliance. He was a puppet master, and the entire town was his stage. The hotel was his ultimate expression of this power. It was his theatre of cruelty, a place where he could control the environment, watch his guests unseen, and indulge his darkest impulses away from prying eyes. The strange architecture suddenly made a terrible kind of sense. Slade lived in the hotel, in the sealed-off suite on the top floor. He rarely emerged. Some said he used the secret tunnels to move through the building like a ghost, observing his guests, listening to their conversations, feeding on their unsuspecting lives. He treated the hotel as his personal kingdom and its staff as his serfs. They feared him utterly. They saw the flicker of madness in his eyes, the casual cruelty in his gestures. He was the dark heart of the building, and his malevolence seeped into the very fabric of the place. He wasn't just the owner, he was the hotel's first and most terrible haunting, even while he was still alive. The hotel's grandeur could not conceal the darkness for long. Stories began to leak out, carried by terrified staff and unsettled guests. They were stories of strange occurrences, of things that defied rational explanation. The most persistent tales centered on room 313. It was a modest room, no different from any other on the third floor. Yet no one could stay the night there. Guests would flee in the middle of the night, babbling about a man standing in the corner of the room, a tall, shadowy figure who simply watched them with unseen eyes. They spoke of a suffocating pressure, a feeling of pure, undiluted hatred that pressed in on them from all sides. The room was always booked, but always empty. Then came the whispers. They were heard most often in the long, dimly lit corridors of the upper floors. Faint, sibilant sounds, like the rustle of dry leaves that seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. Sometimes they were indistinct murmurs, the sound of a secret being shared just beyond the range of hearing. At other times a single word would break through with chilling clarity, a name, A plea for help, a curse. Maids cleaning rooms would hear their own names whispered from an empty wardrobe. Night porters making their rounds would hear footsteps following them, only to turn and find the hallway deserted. The hotel was talking, and its words were of fear and pain. The disappearances started subtly. A travelling salesman who checked in but never checked out. A young woman who had a public argument with Slade over a debt her father owed, last seen entering the hotel lobby. The police would be called, questions would be asked. Slade, with his immense influence, would smooth things over. The salesman, he would suggest, had likely moved on to another town. The young woman, he would hint, was probably of loose morals and had run off with a lover. There was never any evidence, never anything concrete to tie these vanishings to the hotel or its owner. But the people of Hereford knew. They felt it in their bones. The hotel was hungry. Slade's death was as mysterious as his life. He was found in his sealed suite in the winter of 1905. The door was locked from the inside. The official cause of death was a heart attack, but the undertaker spoke of a look of sheer, abject terror frozen on his face. He said his eyes were wide open, staring at some unseen horror on the ceiling. With Slade's death, many hoped the darkness would lift from the hotel. They were wrong. His death was not an end, it was a release. He was no longer bound by flesh and bone. He was free to become one with his creation, to haunt its every corner, its every shadow. The true haunting of the Lazarus Tomb Hotel was about to begin. After Mortimer Slade's death, the hotel passed through a succession of owners. Each one tried to rebrand it, to scrub away the stain of its founder. It was renamed the Wye Valley Inn, the Hereford Arms, the Black Swan. But, the name never stuck. Locals stubbornly referred to it by the name that had taken root in their collective fear. The Lazarus Tomb, because no matter how many coats of fresh paint were applied or how many new carpets were laid, the hotel refused to let go of its past. The darkness Slade had embedded in its foundations had become a permanent part of its structure. It was in the bricks, the mortar, the very soul of the place. The paranormal activity intensified dramatically. Slade's phantom was no longer a subtle presence. It was an active, malevolent force. He was most often seen on the top floor, near his old suite, a tall, imposing figure in Victorian attire, his face a pale blur of fury. Guests would see him standing at the end of a corridor, only for him to vanish into thin air. His angry voice would be heard booming through the hallways, shouting commands or uttering curses. Objects would be thrown across rooms by an unseen hand. Doors would slam shut with violent force, trapping people inside. This was not a residual haunting. It was intelligent, and it was angry. The other spirits grew bolder too, as if empowered by Slade's spectral tyranny. The whispers became clearer, the apparitions more frequent. The ghost of a weeping woman was often seen in the dining room, her sobs echoing in the empty space. A small, frightened child was reported running down the servants' staircase, his bare feet making no sound on the wooden steps. These were believed to be Slade's victims, trapped in the hotel with their tormentor, forced to relive their final moments for eternity. The Lazarus Tomb was not just haunted by one ghost, but by a whole congregation of the damned, all held in thrall by the master of the house. One of the most terrifying phenomena was the Slade effect. People staying in the hotel, particularly in rooms on the third and fourth floors, would report experiencing overwhelming feelings of rage, paranoia, and despair. Cheerful, mild-mannered guests would become withdrawn and aggressive. Arguments would break out between couples for no reason. Some reported being plagued by vivid, violent nightmares, waking up screaming and drenched in sweat. It was as if Slade's own malevolent personality was infectious, a psychic contagion that seeped into the minds of the living, turning the hotel into a pressure cooker of negative emotion. The Lazarus Tomb Hotel does not exist in isolation. It casts a long, dark shadow over the town of Hereford. For generations it has been a source of morbid fascination and honestly genuine fear for the local population. It's the place parents warn their children about, the subject of scary stories told around campfires and in school playgrounds. To the people of Hereford, it isn't just a building, it's a landmark of fear, a constant brooding reminder of the darkness that can lie hidden beneath a respectable surface. It's become a part of the town's identity, a piece of folklore brought chillingly to life. The hotel's reputation has had a tangible impact on the town's economy and social fabric. While it attracts a steady stream of ghost hunters, paranormal investigators and thrill seekers, many locals refuse to go near it. Businesses in the immediate vicinity have often struggled, their customers scared away by the oppressive atmosphere that seems to bleed from the hotel's walls. Staffing the hotel is, well, a nightmare. Few Hereford residents will work there, and those who do rarely last long, driven away by personal experiences or the sheer psychological weight of being in the building day after day. The hotel is an open wound on the town, one that refuses to heal. Local stories about the hotel are legion. Every family seems to have one. A grandfather who worked there as a porter in the 1950s and quit after seeing a full-bodied apparition of Slade on the main staircase. An aunt who stayed there for a wedding in the 80s and had her belongings thrown around the room by an unseen force. A friend who took a dare to spend a night in room 313 and came out the next morning with his hair prematurely greyed, refusing to speak of what he saw. These stories are woven into the tapestry of Hereford life, passed down from one generation to the next, cementing the hotel's reputation as a place of true, undeniable horror. The official stance of the Town Council and Tourism Board is one of cautious ambiguity. They cannot deny the hotel's existence nor its reputation. Instead, they walk a fine line, acknowledging the local legends while trying to promote Hereford's more wholesome attractions, the cathedral, the cider museum, the beautiful countryside. But they know the truth. They know the hotel is a blight. In private, many officials wish it would burn to the ground. But they also know that some fires cannot be extinguished. And some evils are so deeply rooted that demolishing the building would only release them into the town itself. And so, Hereford holds its breath, living alongside the monster in its midst. Over the decades, countless paranormal investigations have been conducted at the Lazarus Tomb Hotel. Teams from all over the world have arrived with their array of sophisticated equipment, EMF meters, thermal imaging cameras, digital voice recorders. They come seeking proof, a definitive piece of evidence to validate the legends. More often than not, they leave with more questions than answers, and a profound sense of unease that lingers long after they have checked out. The hotel seems to play with them, offering tantalizing glimpses of the supernatural before retreating back into silence, as if mocking their attempts to understand it. Electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs, are incredibly common within the hotel. Investigators' recorders capture a cacophony of disembodied voices. The whispers in the walls become audible on playback. Chilling phrases like, "Get out, he's watching and help me." The most sought-after and feared capture is the voice of Slade himself. It is a deep, guttural and commanding voice filled with an ancient rage. On several occasions, investigators asking his name have received a clear, booming response: Slade. The force of the voice is often enough to drain the batteries of their equipment and send a wave of icy cold through the room. Visual phenomena are just as prevalent, though maddeningly elusive. Thermal cameras have captured human-shaped cold spots moving through rooms and corridors. Security cameras left running overnight have recorded doors opening and closing on their own, and dark, shadowy masses moving just at the edge of the frame. Full-bodied apparitions are the holy grail of evidence, and they have been witnessed, but rarely captured cleanly on camera. A fleeting glimpse of a Victorian man in a mirror, the figure of a weeping woman dissolving into thin air, a child's face peering out of a window. These are the images that haunt the memories of those who have sought the truth within the Lazarus tomb. The hotel's energy seems to be intelligent and manipulative. It can mimic sounds, creating footsteps or knocks to lure investigators into traps. It can focus its energy, causing all equipment in a room to fail simultaneously. It seems to feed on fear, becoming more active when investigators are on edge. Some have theorized that Slade's spirit is in complete control of the environment. orchestrating the haunting like a symphony of terror. He is the master of his domain, and he does not take kindly to intruders. He allows them to see just enough to know the stories are true, but never enough to truly expose him. For all the ghost hunters and their gadgets, it's the personal experiences of ordinary guests that paint the most terrifying picture of the Lazarus Tomb Hotel. These are people who check in for a night's stay, often unaware of the building's dark history, only to become unwilling participants in its ongoing horror story. Their accounts are raw, unembellished, and filled with a genuine terror that no scientific reading can ever capture. They are the stories of the unseen guest who shares your room. The one who was never on the register, but has been a resident for a very, very long time. It is a chilling and intimate form of haunting. Guests often speak of the feeling of being watched. It's a common thread in almost every report. A woman showering will feel a sudden, intense gaze upon her despite the locked bathroom door. A man reading in bed will look up, overwhelmed by the certain knowledge that someone is standing in the darkest corner of the room, just beyond the reach of the bedside lamp. It is an invasion of personal space, a violation of the sanctity of a private room. This feeling is often accompanied by a sudden, plummeting drop in temperature. A cold so intense it feels as if a freezer door has been opened right next to you. Physical contact is rarer, but far more terrifying. Guests have reported the feeling of their bed sheets being forcefully pulled off them in the middle of the night. Others have felt the mattress depressed beside them, as if an invisible person has sat down on the edge of the bed. There are accounts of people being pushed by unseen hands in the hallways or feeling icy fingers brush against the back of their neck. One man, a skeptic staying on a dare, reported waking up to find long, red scratch marks down his back, despite having slept alone in a locked room. The hotel does not just want to scare you, sometimes it wants to touch you. The psychological toll is perhaps the most insidious aspect of a stay at the Lazarus Tomb. Guests speak of waking from nightmares so vivid and foul they feel real. Dreams of being trapped, chased, or tormented by a cruel, shadowy man. They report feeling an inexplicable sense of sorrow or anger wash over them, emotions that are not their own. They leave the hotel feeling drained, anxious, and deeply unsettled, the experience clinging to them for weeks or even months afterwards. They have checked into a hotel but have stayed in a tomb, and they have unwittingly lain down next to its master, the unseen and eternal guest, Mortimer Slade. Today, on the 7th of July 2025, the Lazarus Tomb Hotel still stands. It is a dark and silent sentinel on its quiet Hereford street. Its bricks seem to have absorbed over a century of sorrow, its windows staring out like the eyes of a skull. The stories have not faded with time, they have only grown stronger, more numerous, more chilling. The hotel continues to operate, a grim tourist attraction that trades on its own infamy. People still come, drawn by the allure of the forbidden, the desire to touch the void, to spend a night in the presence of true evil. And the hotel, it seems, is always waiting to welcome them. The legacy of Mortimer Slade is now inseparable from the town of Hereford itself. He is their bogeyman, their homegrown monster. He is a cautionary tale about the darkness that can lurk behind a veneer of wealth and respectability. His evil was so profound, so absolute, that it transcended his own mortality. He did not simply die. He imprinted himself onto his surroundings, turning his grand hotel into a personal hell that he could rule for eternity. He is a testament to the chilling idea that some personalities are too powerful, too malevolent, to simply fade away into nothingness. The phenomena continue unabated. The whispers still echo in the walls, the shadowy figure still stalks the corridors, and room 313 still claims no overnight guests. Every new visitor adds another layer to the legend, another story of a sleepless night spent in terror. The hotel has become a self-perpetuating engine of fear, fueled by the memory of its creator and the fresh terror of its guests. It is a place where the veil between worlds is not just thin, it has been torn asunder. The spirits of Slade's victims remain trapped, their spectral cries a permanent part of the building's soundscape, forever bound to their tormentor. And so, the ultimate question hangs heavy in the damp Hereford air, a question that has no easy answer. Is Mortimer Slade's presence merely a psychic echo, a stain of residual energy left behind by a life of immense cruelty? Or is there something more? Is his conscious, intelligent and malevolent spirit still there, walking the halls of his creation, deriving an eternal twisted pleasure from the fear of all who dare to enter? Is he still in control, the master of his dark domain, forever holding court in the hotel he built as his monument and transformed into his tomb? The Lazarus Tomb Hotel keeps its secrets well, but for those who have felt his presence, there is no question at all. He is there, and he is waiting.